You're going to apologize to my friend right now, or I swear I'll make you regret every word that just came out of your mouth. The crack of my palm against his cheek echoed through the airplane cabin like a gunshot. 30,000 feet above the ground, and I just slapped a complete stranger. His head barely moved. Dark eyes met mine with something that wasn't anger or shock, but something far more unsettling. Amusement. Lila, what did you just do? Sarah whispered beside me, her voice strangled with panic. She was still crying from whatever this man had said to her when she'd accidentally bumped into him heading to the bathroom. The man rubbed his jaw slowly, deliberately, like he was savoring the sting. He was probably in his early 30s, wearing a simple black sweater that somehow looked more expensive than my entire wardrobe. Everything about him screamed danger, from the way he held himself to the cold calculation behind those nearly black eyes. "Finally," he said, his voice low and rough, "someone real." My heart hammered against my ribs. The other passengers were staring now, some pulling out phones. This was going to be all over social media in minutes. But I didn't care. Nobody talked to Sarah the way this man had. "Real enough to knock some manners into you if you don't back off," I shot back, my hands still trembling with adrenaline. He laughed. Actually laughed. Not the bitter, mocking sound I expected, but something genuine and warm that made my stomach flip in a way I absolutely did not want to examine. "Miss, please return to your seat." A flight attendant appeared, her professional smile strained. "Sir, is everything all right?" The man's eyes never left mine. "Everything's perfect," he said. "Just met someone interesting." "Hey there, my wonderful friend. How's your day going? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this story so far. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from." Sarah tugged at my sleeve. "Lila, please, let's just go sit down." But I couldn't move. This stranger had reduced my best friend to tears, and now he was looking at me like I'd just done him a favor. Like slapping him was exactly what he'd been hoping for. "Your friend owes me a new shirt," he said casually, settling back into his first-class seat. "Coffee stains." "She already apologized," I snapped. "Maybe try being human about accidents." "Human." He tasted the word like fine wine. "I'll work on that." Something cold crawled up my spine. The way he said it, like being human was a foreign concept he might consider trying on for size. That should have been my first warning. 20 minutes later, I was still stealing glances at him. Sarah had fallen asleep against my shoulder, exhausted from crying, and I was trying to focus on my book when turbulence hit. Not the gentle kind that makes your stomach flutter, but the violent, white-knuckle variety that sends overhead bins rattling. The plane dropped suddenly, and Sarah jolted awake with a gasp. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing some unexpected weather patterns." The captain's voice crackled through the intercom, tighter than it should have been. "Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened." A woman across the aisle started hyperventilating. Her husband looked green around the gills, muttering prayers under his breath. But when I glanced toward first class, the man I'd slapped was completely calm, reading what looked like a financial report like we weren't being tossed around like a toy. Another violent shake sent my water bottle flying. It rolled down the aisle and stopped right at his feet. He looked up, caught my eye, and without a word walked it back to me. In the middle of turbulence that had everyone else gripping their armrests. "You're either very brave or very stupid," I said as he handed me the bottle. "Probably both." His fingers brushed mine for just a second. "Your friend okay?" I blinked. Was he actually asking about Sarah's well-being? "She's scared of flying." "Smart girl." He glanced toward the cockpit. "This isn't weather." Something in his voice made my blood chill. "What do you mean?" Before he could answer, the lights flickered. Once, twice, then stayed dim. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in an eerie red glow. "This is your captain speaking," came the announcement, but the voice was different now. Younger. Ikier. "We're experiencing some technical difficulties and will need to make an emergency landing. Please remain calm." Technical difficulties. At 30,000 feet. Sarah grabbed my hand, her nails digging into my palm. Around us, passengers were starting to panic. Real panic, not just turbulence nerves. Baby began screaming. Someone was throwing up. But the man from first class moved through the chaos like he owned it, making his way to our row with that same unsettling calm. "What's your name?" he asked me directly. "Lila." The word slipped out before I could stop it. "Lila." He said it like he was testing how it felt. "I need you to listen to me very carefully. In about 30 seconds, the oxygen masks are going to drop. When they do, help your friend first, then yourself. Don't wait for instructions." "How could you possibly know that?" His eyes were steady, dark as midnight. "Because I've been in situations like this before." "What kind of situations?" But even as I asked, I was already reaching for Sarah's hand, preparing for something I didn't understand. 28 seconds later, the masks dropped with a mechanical hiss. Pandemonium erupted. People screaming, crying, grabbing for the dangling yellow cups. But I was already helping Sarah secure hers, following his instructions without knowing why I trusted him. "Good girl," he murmured, close enough that only I could hear. "Now stay calm. Whatever happens next, don't panic." "Whatever happens next?" My voice cracked. "What's going to happen next?" He was about to answer when a flight attendant appeared, her professional composure completely shattered. She was young, maybe 25, with blonde hair escaping from what had been a perfect bun. But what caught my attention were her eyes. Wild, desperate. "Excuse me, sir," she said to him, her voice shaking. "Could I speak with you privately?" Something passed between them. A look I couldn't interpret, but it made every instinct I had start screaming warnings. "Of course," he said smoothly, then turned back to me. "Stay with your friend." They moved toward the galley, and I watched through the chaos as she spoke rapidly, urgently, her hands gesturing frantically. His expression never changed, but his posture shifted, became more alert, more dangerous. When he returned, everything about him was different. "Lila," he said quietly, "I need you to trust me." "Trust you? I don't even know you." "My name is Adrian Vale." He said it like it should mean something, like it was a gift. "And right now I might be the only thing Stan." "My name is Adrian Vale." He said it like it should mean something, like it was a gift. "And right now I might be the only thing standing between you and something much worse than a plane crash." The way he said my name made my chest tight, like he'd been waiting his whole life to say it. That's when I noticed the flight attendant was gone, vanished, and 2 men in suits had appeared in first class who definitely hadn't been there when we boarded. "Adrian," I whispered, testing his name, tasting the danger in it. "What's really happening?" His hand found mine, warm and steady and completely sure. "That's what we're about to find out." The plane lurched violently to the left, and this time it wasn't turbulence. "Ladies and gentlemen," a new voice came over the intercom, crisp and professional. "This is your new captain speaking. Please remain calm and follow all instructions. We'll be landing in approximately 40 minutes. New captain." Sarah's grip on my hand tightened to the point of pain. "Lila, that's not the same voice from before." Adrian was already moving, but not toward the cockpit like I expected. Instead, he pulled out his phone and typed something rapidly. Within seconds, he was talking in low, urgent tones to someone on the other end. "How is he getting cell service at this altitude?" Sarah whispered. "Good question." But before I could ask it, one of the suited men from first class appeared in our aisle. Up close, he was massive, with the kind of build that came from years of serious violence. His eyes swept over our section like he was cataloging every face. "Mr. Vale," he called out, his accent thick and Eastern European. "Your presence is requested in the cockpit." Adrian finished his call and slipped the phone into his pocket. When he looked at me, something had shifted in his expression. The amusement was gone, replaced by something colder, more focused. "No," he said simply. The suited man's hand moved to his jacket. "That wasn't a request." "Victor," Adrian's voice carried the kind of authority that made my spine straighten involuntarily. "You're making a mistake, Victor." So Adrian knew him. "The only mistake," Victor replied, "was thinking you'd come quietly." That's when I saw the gun. Not drawn, just visible beneath Victor's jacket. A reminder of power, of consequences. Sarah made a small, terrified sound beside me. Around us, other passengers were starting to notice the tension, conversations dying as fear spread through the cabin like wildfire. "Here's what's going to happen," Adrian said, and his voice was completely different now. Not the warm, amused tone from earlier, but something that could cut glass. "You're going to walk back to first class. You're going to tell Dimitri that this conversation never happened. And you're going to pray I don't remember your face when this is over." Victor laughed, but it sounded forced. "You think you still have power here? 30,000 feet up, surrounded by innocent people." Adrian smiled, and it was the most terrifying thing I'd ever seen. "Victor, you have no idea what kind of power I have." The temperature in the cabin seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Besides," Adrian continued, "you need me alive. Dead, I'm worthless to Dimitri. But angry." He shrugged. "That's when people start disappearing." My blood turned to ice. People start disappearing. What kind of man talked about making people disappear like it was a business transaction? Victor hesitated, and in that moment of uncertainty, Adrian made his move. He stepped directly in front of me and Sarah, creating a human shield with his body. "These women are under my protection now," he announced, loud enough for the entire cabin to hear. "Anyone who touches them answers to me." "Adrian," I started, but he cut me off with a look. "Trust me," he said quietly. "Please." Victor's radio crackled to life. A rapid conversation in what sounded like Russian, too fast for me to catch even if I'd understood the language. His expression darkened with each exchange. 10 minutes, he said finally to Adrian. "Then we come for you." 10 minutes, Adrian agreed. As Victor disappeared back toward first class, Adrian turned to face us fully. The man who'd laughed at being slapped, who'd calmly retrieved my water bottle, was gone. In his place was someone who looked like he could command armies. "Lila," he said, "I need you to listen very carefully. In about 8 minutes, things are going to get very dangerous on this plane." "More dangerous?" Sarah's voice cracked. "What's happening? Who are those people?" Adrian's eyes met mine, and I saw something that looked almost like regret. "They're here for me. This whole thing, the hijacking, the fake emergency landing, it's all to get me somewhere I don't want to go." "Why?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. "Because 3 days ago, I killed Dmitry Kozlov's brother." The words hit me like a physical blow. Killed. He'd killed someone. "Self-defense," he added quickly, reading my expression. "Anton Kozlov was trafficking children through my territory. I put a stop to it." Trafficking children. My head spun, trying to process the moral complexity of what he was telling me. He'd killed someone but to save children. He was dangerous, but he'd protected Sarah and me without hesitation. "Your territory," Sarah whispered. Adrian's jaw tightened. "I run certain operations on the East Coast. Dmitry wants me to pay for his brother's death, but more than that, he wants my shipping routes. This is a hostile takeover disguised as revenge." Shipping routes. Operations. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. "You're Mafia," I breathed. "Among other things." His eyes never left mine. "But right now, I'm the only person on this plane who can keep you alive." "Why should we trust you?" Sarah demanded, finding her voice. "You just admitted to murder." "Because," Adrian said, checking his watch, "in 6 minutes, Dimitri's men are going to start executing passengers until I surrender. They'll start with the children, then work their way up to anyone who looks like they might be important to me." His gaze locked on mine with laser intensity. "And thanks to your very public slap earlier, every person on this plane knows exactly how important you are to me." The blood drained from my face. "What?" Victor has a tablet with security footage from the boarding area. He saw you stand up to me. He saw me walk your water bottle back personally. He watched me move to protect you." Adrian's voice was grim. "In his world, that makes you my weakness." Sarah grabbed my arm. "Lila, we need to get away from him." But Adrian shook his head. "Too late for that. You're in this now, whether you want to be or not." He leaned closer, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "But I promise you this. I will get you both off this plane alive. Even if it kills me." The way he said it, like a vow, like a prayer, made something deep in my chest clench tight. "What do you need us to do?" I heard myself ask. Sarah stared at me in shock. "Lila." But I was looking into Adrian's eyes, seeing something there that called to every protective instinct I had. He was dangerous, yes, probably lethal. But he was also the only person on this plane who seemed to have any idea how to fight back. And despite everything, despite the fear and the chaos and the impossible situation, I trusted him. Adrian smiled, and for just a moment, it was the same warm expression from when I'd slapped him. "I need you to be exactly who you are," he said. "Brave, fierce, unbreakable." "And if we're not?" Sarah asked. His expression hardened back into something deadly. "Then a lot of innocent people are going to die." The radio crackled again from first class. Victor's voice, calling out something sharp and urgent. "Time's up," Adrian said. Victor emerged from first class with 3 other men, each one looking like they could bench press a small car. But it was the woman walking behind them that made my blood freeze. The blonde flight attendant. The one who'd disappeared earlier. She wasn't panicked anymore. In fact, she looked perfectly composed as she surveyed the cabin like she owned it. "Nadia," Adrian said, and there was something like disappointment in his voice. "I wondered when you'd show yourself." "Hello, Adrian." Her accent was subtle but definitely there, Eastern European like Victor's. "You look well for a dead man. The reports of my death have been greatly exaggerated." Adrian's hand found mine, squeezing gently. A warning. Though I have to admit, using a commercial flight was creative. Dimitri's learning. Nadia smiled, and it was nothing like the nervous young woman who'd spoken to Adrian earlier. This was predatory, cold. "He sends his regards." "I'm sure he does." Adrian's thumb traced across my knuckles, the touch somehow both comforting and electric. Though I notice he didn't come himself. "Would you?" Nadia gestured around the cabin. "All these innocent witnesses. Tomesi. This way is cleaner." My stomach dropped. Innocent witnesses. She was talking about killing everyone on this plane. "The children," Sarah whispered beside me, looking toward a family 3 rows up. A little girl, maybe 6 years old, was coloring in a book while her baby brother slept in their mother's arms. Nadia followed her gaze and shrugged. "Collateral damage." That's when I saw it. The exact moment Adrian made his decision. His entire body went still, like a predator preparing to strike. When he looked at Nadia again, his eyes were absolutely flat. Me. For the first time since I'd met him, he looked like exactly what he was. Killer. "Nadia," he said conversationally, "you just made a very serious mistake." "Did I?" She gestured to Victor and his men. "You're outnumbered 4-1. 5-1 if you count me." 6-1, came a voice from behind us. I spun around to see the pilot walking down the aisle. The real pilot, the one who'd been flying us before the hijacking. Except he wasn't bound or injured like I'd expected. He was calm, professional, and very clearly working with them. "Captain Morrison," Adrian said without looking back. "Dimitri's paying better than the airline these days." Morrison shrugged. "Retirement's expensive." My world tilted. Pilot. The flight attendant. How many other people on this plane were part of this? "Who else?" I asked Adrian quietly. His eyes swept the cabin methodically. "Air Marshal 2nd row. The businessman in 12C. Probably the woman with the baby." "The woman with the baby." Sarah's voice cracked. But she has children. Perfect cover, Adrian replied grimly. No one suspects a mother. I felt like I was drowning. Everyone around us could be an enemy. Everyone could be waiting to kill us. Adrian, Nadia called out. Enough games. You're coming with us. Now. Or what? Or we start with your new girlfriend. Victor's gun appeared in his hand, pointed directly at my chest. The world narrowed to that black barrel, to the casual way Victor held it, like pointing weapons at civilians was just another Tuesday for him. Interesting choice, Adrian said, his voice deadly calm. Threatening her. We know she matters to you, Nadia replied. The footage from boarding makes that very clear. She slapped me, Adrian pointed out. Most people would consider that grounds for dislike, not protection. Most people, Nadia agreed. Don't look at someone the way you're looking at her right now. Heat crept up my neck. Was I that obvious? Was Adrian? Besides, she continued, you've been holding her hand for the last 10 minutes. Rather intimate for strangers, don't you think? I looked down. She was right. Our fingers were intertwined, my pale skin contrasting with his darker complexion. When had that happened? Let her go, Victor said. Come with us quietly, and maybe we let the passengers live. Maybe. Adrian's laugh was like broken glass. Not good enough. It's the only offer you're getting. That's when the plane lurched again, harder this time. The pilot stumbled, grabbing for support. What was that? Nadia demanded. Captain Morrison looked genuinely confused. That wasn't me. The intercom crackled to life, but this time the voice was different. Younger. Female. This is air traffic control. Flight 447, you are ordered to change course immediately. Military aircraft are being scrambled to escort you to Andrews Air Force Base. Silence fell over the cabin like a blanket. That's impossible, Morrison breathed. We disabled the transponder. Adrian smiled, and it was sharp as a blade. Did you really think I got on this plane without backup? Nadia's composure cracked for the first time. What did you do? Made a phone call, Adrian said casually. You remember the phone call, Victor. Right after you introduced yourself so politely. The blood drained from Victor's face. You called in a terrorist threat. I called in the truth. A commercial aircraft has been hijacked by foreign nationals attempting to kidnap an American citizen. Adrian's voice carried absolute confidence. The FBI is very interested in Dimitri's operation. You're bluffing, Nadia said, but uncertainty flickered in her eyes. Am I? Adrian pulled out his phone, showing her the screen. A text message thread with someone labeled Federal Contact. The latest message read, F-16's airborne. 12 minutes. Nadia lunged for the phone, but Adrian was faster. He caught her wrist, twisted, and suddenly she was on her knees in the aisle, crying out in pain. Rule number 1, he said conversationally. Never try to disarm someone when you don't know their training. Victor swung his gun toward Adrian, but froze when he realized Sarah and I were directly in his line of fire. Rule number 2, Adrian continued, releasing Nadia but keeping her phone. Always know who you're dealing with before you make threats. Who are you? Morrison demanded. Adrian straightened his sweater like nothing had happened. Someone who doesn't negotiate with terrorists. The plane shuddered again, and this time I could see lights through the windows. Not city lights, aircraft lights, fast-moving and getting closer. Military escort confirmed, came the voice from the cockpit radio. Flight 447, maintain current heading and prepare for emergency landing procedures. Victor was sweating now, his gun wavering between Adrian and the approaching aircraft. This changes nothing. We still have hostages. You have civilians, Adrian corrected. I have assets. Assets. Every person on this plane becomes my responsibility the moment you threaten them. Adrian's voice dropped to something that made my skin crawl. And I protect my assets very, very thoroughly. That's when I heard it. A sound that didn't belong on a commercial airliner. Clicking. Mechanical. Like weapons being readied. I turned to see the air marshal in the second row standing up, but he wasn't drawing his service weapon. He was pulling out something much larger. Much more military. Federal Air Marshal Johnson, he announced. Everyone remained calm. But he wasn't looking at Victor or Nadia. He was looking at Adrian. Adrian Vale, Johnson called out. You're under arrest for racketeering, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit murder. The world stopped spinning. Adrian had called the FBI. But the FBI wasn't here to rescue us. They were here to arrest him. Sarah's hand found my arm, squeezing tight. Lila, she whispered. We need to get away from him. Now. But I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Because Adrian was looking at me with something that might have been regret. And I was realizing that everything he'd told me might have been a lie. I'm sorry, he said quietly. And I could barely hear him over the blood rushing in my ears. You used us, I breathed. You used the hijacking as cover to call in federal protection. Lila, it's not what you think. Isn't it? My voice cracked. You're a criminal. A real criminal. And we're just collateral damage in whatever game you're playing. Victor started laughing. Did you really think he cared about you? Adrian Vale doesn't care about anyone but himself. That's not true, Adrian said, but his voice sounded distant now. Then prove it, Johnson called out. Surrender yourself, and we'll guarantee the safety of the passengers. Adrian looked at me one more time, and I saw something break behind his eyes. I can't, he said. And that's when I knew Sarah was right. We needed to get away from him. But as I started to stand, as I started to pull away from the man who'd promised to protect us, Victor's gun swung toward the family with a little girl. If I can't have Vale, he announced, then nobody gets a happy ending. The gunshot was deafening. For a split second I thought Victor had shot the little girl. My heart stopped, my breath caught, and the world tilted sideways. But the blood spreading across the cabin floor wasn't hers. It was Air Marshal Johnson's. Federal protection, Victor sneered, standing over the marshal's body. How's that working out for you, Vale? Adrian's face went completely white. Johnson was dirty. Johnson was ours, Nadia confirmed, pulling herself up from the aisle. Did you really think Dimitri wouldn't have people inside your precious FBI? The plane lurched violently as Captain Morrison sent us into a steep dive. Through the windows, I could see the military escort peeling away. Their mission apparently complete now that the federal asset was dead. No, Adrian breathed, his phone pressed to his ear. Marcus talked to me. Marcus. But whoever Marcus was, he wasn't answering. Your federal contact sends his regrets, Victor said. Seems he had a sudden change of heart about protecting known criminals. Sarah was crying beside me, staring at Johnson's body. The little girl 3 rows up was screaming now. Her mother trying desperately to shield her from the sight of blood. And I finally understood. Adrian's plan hadn't just failed. It had been a trap from the beginning. You knew, I said, the words coming out flat and dead. You knew the FBI contact was compromised. Adrian's eyes found mine, and I saw the truth there. I suspected. You suspected. The words tasted like ash. And you called him anyway. I had to try something. Victor was going to start killing people. So instead you led them right to us. My voice cracked. You made everything worse. Lila, please, I can explain. Explain what? I stood up, shaking with rage and terror and betrayal. How you used us as human shields while you played your little Mafia games. How you made us targets. That's not what happened. Isn't it? I was shouting now, past caring who heard me. You said Victor saw you protecting us. You said that made us important to you. But really you just needed witnesses, didn't you? People who would make your story believable when you called for help. Adrian flinched like I'd slapped him again. You're wrong. Am I? Tears were streaming down my face now. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you just got a federal agent killed trying to save your own skin. Enough, Victor interrupted. This is touching, but we have business to finish. He gestured to his men, and they began moving through the cabin, checking passengers systematically. Looking for something. Or someone. What are you doing? Adrian demanded. Making sure we didn't miss anyone important, Nadia replied. Dimitri was very specific about loose ends. That's when I saw one of Victor's men stop at the row behind us. The businessman in 12C, the one Adrian had identified as working with him. But instead of acknowledging him, the man grabbed him by the collar and hauled him to his feet. Please, the businessman stammered. I did everything you asked. I identified the targets. I confirmed Vale was on board. And now you're a witness, the man replied, and shot him in the chest. Sarah screamed. Other passengers were crying, praying, some trying to hide under their seats. The little girl's mother was whispering frantically into her phone, trying to reach someone, anyone who could help. Clean house, Victor called out to his team. No loose ends. Another gunshot. The woman with the baby, the one Adrian had suspected. She dropped without a sound, and her infant began wailing, alone in his carrier. Stop, Adrian said, his voice cracking. This isn't necessary. I'll come with you. Just stop killing innocent people. Innocent? Victor laughed. There's no such thing as innocent. Everyone on this plane saw your face. Heard your name. They're all loose ends now. Including us, Sarah whispered, her face white as paper. That's when it hit me. The full scope of what was happening. They weren't just taking Adrian. They were eliminating everyone who could connect him to this hijacking. Everyone who could testify about what they'd seen. All of us. You're going to kill everyone, I said, the words coming out numb. Eventually, Nadia confirmed. But first, we're going to make sure Adrian understands the price of his interference. She nodded to one of her men, and he grabbed Sarah by the hair, dragging her out of her seat. No! I lunged forward, but Victor's gun was already pressed against my temple. Stay where you are, little bird, he murmured. Your turn is coming. Sarah was thrown to her knees in the aisle, tears streaming down her face. The man behind her drew a knife, the blade glinting in the emergency lighting. This is what happens, Nadia said to Adrian, when you interfere with family business. Please. Adrian's voice broke completely. She has nothing to do with this. Neither of them do. This is between me and Dimitri. No, Nadia replied. This is between you and consequences. The knife moved toward Sarah's throat, and I saw my best friend's life about to end because I'd been too stupid, too trusting, too eager to believe that someone like Adrian Vale could actually care about people like us. But then Adrian did something I didn't expect. He dropped to his knees. I surrender, he said, his hands raised. Complete surrender. Take me to Dimitri. Do whatever you want to me. But let them go. Victor's grip on me loosened slightly. What? I'm offering myself in exchange for the passengers. All of them. Adrian's voice was steady now, resolved. That's what Dimitri wants, isn't it? Me broken. Humiliated. Well, here I am. Adrian, no, I breathed. He looked at me one last time, and what I saw in his eyes wasn't the cold calculation of a criminal or the warm amusement of a charmer. It was something raw and real and completely human. I'm sorry, he said. For all of it. You deserved better. Nadia studied him for a long moment. You're serious. Dead serious. Let them live, and I'll cooperate completely. No fights, no escape attempts, no calls for help. You have my word. The word of Adrian Vale, Victor mused. What's that worth? Everything I have left. The plane leveled out, and I could see lights below us. We were descending toward some kind of airstrip, but not a commercial airport. Somewhere private. Somewhere no one would think to look for us. Deal, Nadia said finally. But if you try anything, if you so much as look at us wrong, we start with the girl who slapped you. My blood froze. Understood, Adrian replied. As Victor's men moved to restrain him, Adrian caught my eye one more time. When this is over, he said quietly. Tell them the truth about what happened here. Tell them I tried. Adrian, I started, but he was already being dragged toward the front of the plane. That's when I realized something that made my heart stop. He wasn't planning to survive this. He was planning to die to save us. And despite everything he'd done, everything he'd failed to do, I couldn't let that happen. Not when I was finally starting to understand who he really was underneath all the lies and calculations and deadly reputation. Not when I was realizing that maybe, just maybe, the man who'd laughed when I slapped him was the most real person I'd ever met. Sarah, I whispered, when I move, run for the emergency exit. What are you talking about? I looked toward the front of the plane, where they were binding Adrian's hands with zip ties, where Nadia was already making a call to tell Dimitri they had what he wanted. I'm talking about fighting back. The plane touched down with a bone-jarring thud on what looked like an abandoned airstrip. Through the windows, I could see black SUVs waiting, their engines running, exhaust visible in the cold night air. End of the line, Victor announced, hauling Adrian to his feet. But I was already moving. The emergency exit was 6 rows ahead, past Victor's men, past Nadia, past everything that stood between us and survival. Sarah was right behind me, her hand gripping my jacket so tight I could feel her nails through the fabric. Now! Shouted. We ran. Not toward the exit like I'd told Sarah, toward Adrian, because in that split second, I'd realized something crucial. Victor's men were positioned to control the passengers, not to stop someone moving toward the threat. They expected people to run away from danger, not toward it. Just like they expected Adrian to be a selfish criminal who'd sacrifice others to save himself, not someone who'd surrender everything to protect strangers. Everyone had been underestimating everyone else. Lila, what are you doing? Sarah cried, but she didn't let go. I grabbed the first thing I could find, a metal coffee pot from the galley, still hot from before the hijacking, and hurled it at Victor's head with every ounce of strength I had. It connected with a wet crack that echoed through the cabin. Victor stumbled, his gun clattering to the floor, and in that moment of chaos, Adrian moved. His hands might have been zip-tied, but apparently that didn't matter much when you knew how to kill people. He spun, driving his elbow into the throat of the man holding him, then pivoted to sweep another man's legs. The gun, he shouted to me. I dove for Victor's weapon, my hands shaking as I wrapped my fingers around the grip. I'd never held a gun before in my life, but desperation made me brave. Everybody down! I screamed at the passengers. They dropped to the floor like dominoes. Nadia was reaching for her own weapon when Sarah, quiet, terrified Sarah, picked up the fallen coffee pot and brought it down on her wrist with a sickening crunch. Nadia's scream was inhuman. That's for the baby, Sarah said, and there was steel in her voice I'd never heard before. But we weren't done yet. More of Victor's men were moving, and the plane doors were opening. The SUVs outside were disgorging more armed figures, and we were trapped 30,000 feet from any help that mattered. Adrian, I called out, your hands. He backed toward me, and I used Victor's knife to cut through the zip ties. The moment his hands were free, he scooped up 2 fallen weapons with the kind of fluid motion that spoke of years of practice. Stay behind me, he ordered, but I shook my head. We fight together or we don't fight at all. Something flickered in his eyes. Pride maybe. Or recognition. Together then. The next few minutes were chaos. Gunfire and shouting and the acrid smell of gunpowder. Adrian moved like liquid death, always positioned between the shooters and the civilians, always protecting, always calculating angles to minimize collateral damage. I'd never seen anything like it. He wasn't just fighting for his life. He was fighting for all of us. But there were too many of them. For every man Adrian dropped, 2 more appeared from the vehicles outside. We were being overwhelmed. That's when I heard it. Helicopter rotors. Multiple aircraft, coming in fast and low. This is the FBI, came a voice through a megaphone. Everyone on the ground now. Real FBI this time. I could tell by the way Victor's remaining men suddenly looked terrified instead of confident. How? Nadia gasped, clutching her broken wrist. Adrian smiled, blood running from a cut on his forehead. I made 2 phone calls before Victor showed up. You only heard about one. Who was the second call? Asked. My lawyer. Adrian's grin was sharp. Turns out confessing to federal crimes while being actively kidnapped gets you protection, not prosecution. Especially when you're offering to testify against international trafficking rings. The helicopter searchlights blazed through the windows, and suddenly the airstrip was full of federal agents in tactical gear. Real ones this time, with proper identification and backup and the kind of coordinated response that spoke of hours of planning. Victor tried to run and made it exactly 3 steps before a taser dropped him like a stone. Nadia surrendered immediately, probably calculating that cooperation might buy her a lighter sentence. And just like that, it was over. The aftermath was a blur of debriefings and medical checks and endless questions from federal agents who seemed genuinely impressed that civilians had managed to retake a hijacked aircraft. Sarah became a minor celebrity when the story broke, the shy girl who'd fought back with a coffee pot. The other passengers treated us like heroes. But all I could think about was Adrian. Where are they taking him? I asked Agent Martinez, the lead investigator. Protective custody for now, she replied. His testimony is going to put away a lot of very dangerous people. Dmitry Kozlov's organization, the trafficking network, the corrupt federal agents. It's going to be a long process. Will I see him again? Martinez studied me carefully. That depends. Are you prepared for what a relationship with someone like Adrian Vale actually means? The security details, the death threats, the constant looking over your shoulder. Thought about it. Really thought about it. 3 hours ago, I said finally. I slapped a complete stranger for being rude to my best friend. Tonight I helped retake a hijacked plane and probably saved 30 lives. I think I can handle whatever comes next. Martinez smiled. I think you probably can. 2 weeks later, Sarah and I were sitting in a small cafe in downtown Richmond, trying to return to something resembling normal life. She was telling me about her new job offer. Apparently, surviving a hijacking looks great on a resume, when someone slid into the booth across from us. Adrian. He looked different. Cleaner somehow, like a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. His dark hair was shorter, and he was wearing a simple blue sweater instead of the expensive black one from the plane. Fancy meeting you here, he said, and his smile was the same warm expression from when I'd slapped him. Are you following us? I asked, but I was smiling too. Maybe a little. He gestured around the cafe. This place has excellent security. 3 exits, good sight lines, and the coffee isn't terrible. Still thinking like a criminal. Old habits. Adrian's expression grew serious. But I'm working on new ones. The FBI has been very helpful with career counseling. Sarah excused herself to get more coffee, probably sensing that Adrian and I needed to talk alone. So, I said when she was gone, how does this work? Honestly, I have no idea. Adrian reached across the table, his fingers brushing mine. I've never tried to have a normal relationship before. Good thing I'm not exactly normal either. No, he agreed. You're definitely not. Normal people don't charge armed hijackers with coffee pots. Normal people don't surrender themselves to save strangers either. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching Sarah chat with the barista about the proper way to foam milk. Adrian, I said finally, tell me the truth. On the plane, when you said you'd protect us, was that real? Or was it just strategy? He was quiet for so long I thought he wasn't going to answer. Do you remember what I said when you slapped me? He asked finally. You said, finally, someone real. I meant it. His eyes met mine, dark and steady and completely honest. I've spent most of my life surrounded by people who wanted something from me. Money, protection, fear, respect. But you saw someone being cruel to your friend, and you didn't care who I was or what I might do to you. You just acted. That's not special, I protested. That's just being human. Lila, Adrian said softly, In my world, being human is the rarest thing of all. Sarah returned with our coffee refills and a knowing smile. So, she said, settling back into the booth, are we going to pretend this isn't happening, or are we going to acknowledge that you two are completely crazy about each other? I felt heat creep up my neck. Sarah. What? It's obvious. She turned to Adrian. You literally dismantled an international crime syndicate to keep her safe. And she literally fought armed terrorists with kitchen equipment to save me, Adrian replied. I think that makes us even. It makes you perfect for each other, Sarah corrected. Two people who are completely insane in exactly complementary ways. Adrian laughed, and the sound was warm and genuine and full of possibilities I was just beginning to imagine. There's something else, he said, pulling out his phone. Agent Martinez wanted me to show you this. The screen displayed a news article. The headline read, Kozlov trafficking network dismantled in international raid, dozens of missing children recovered. They found them, I breathed. The children Anton Kozlov was trafficking. 43 kids, aged 6 to 16, rescued from facilities in 3 countries. Adrian's voice was thick with emotion. Because of what happened on that plane. Because you stood up to me. Because Sarah fought back. Because we all refused to let them win. I stared at the photos of children being reunited with their families, and suddenly everything we'd been through felt different. Not like a nightmare we'd survived, but like the most important thing we'd ever done. So what happens now? Yes. Adrian smiled, and it was the expression of a man who'd finally found something worth protecting. Now, he said, we see what real looks like. Outside the cafe window, normal life continued. People walking their dogs, couples holding hands, children laughing as they chased pigeons in the park. But inside our little booth, something extraordinary was beginning. Something that started with a slap and ended with a choice. Something real. Thank you for taking this journey with Lila, Adrian, and Sarah. I hope you enjoyed this emotional roller coaster of loyalty, danger, unexpected love, and the kind of courage that emerges when ordinary people are faced with extraordinary circumstances. Drop a comment below and let me know what you thought. I'd love to hear from you.